Hey, kids. Hey, kids. It's that time again. It's Monday, July 27th. And so we are coming at you with Conscious Embodiment, Astrology, and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. That's me. I am your host here with producer Zoe. Howdy, Zoe.
Hey, Michael, how's it going? What's up, listeners?
It's good. Listen, we're sort of we're in a begin again moment, right? It's the almost the end of the month, so we're almost in a new month, right?
hmm
It's going to be July in a couple of days. It's also going to be the new moon tomorrow, so we're at the beginning of a lunar cycle. So if there's anything to say about that, June was definitely an easier month than certainly than May was with the eclipse season. But it was a little bit of a rougher lunar cycle than I anticipated. We talked about this last week, and I think
Yeah.
driven greatly by, the presence in the full moon of Mars and Chiron conjuncting in Aries, I think really triggered a lot of people in their wounding healing journey. And so
Mm.
I think there was a little bit more of a depth and gravitas to the last lunar cycle. Still, not quite like eclipses. But we are facing our next new moon in Cancer season. That is hitting tomorrow. So let's talk a little bit about Cancer archetype, the Cancer mansion, and what this new moon is going to bring us. At the heart of this mansion is self-care.
Hmm.
This is where we first connect to things like restoration, safety, preparation that must come before movement. Right? In fact, the opposite side of Cancer is Capricorn. So the full moon in Capricorn is where we take a look at making sure that we're connected to what our needs are that are private and personal and internal, so that we can climb the mountain of our goals, desires, and ambitions. Capricorns. We'll be talking about that at the full moon this month. In fact, I always like to talk about the power of the evolution of the first 6 signs of the zodiac, where it starts in the void of Pisces, where this energy says, I'll go into that void. And that's Aries, who dives in and springs up into creating the I am that we are. Taurus tells us where we are and offers the earth and form itself. And Gemini comes along and says, well, we can't have communication or word or connectivity. How's this going to work? So Gemini gives us language and communication. And then Cancer's the next piece of this evolution, so that we're here, we're in form, we can communicate. Before we do anything else in the evolution of our psyche, we've got to learn how to take care of ourselves. That's the elegance of Cancer coming next. In fact, the next mansion is Leo, where we learn to be joyful and expressive and creative and dance in this beautiful experience that life offers. But we don't get to do the dancing until we understand how to sustain and nurture ourselves so that we can, in fact, meet the demands of this world, this life that we're living.
I have a lot of Cancers in my life. Actually, a small handful of very close friends, as well as my mom. And I feel like they all feel very loving and nurturing.
Yep.
Just that, tender feel.
Well, and that is at the heart of this archetype is that tender, nurturing, maternal energy. Now, of course, Cancer energy has a shadow. We'll talk a lot about that in the new moon because the Cancer new moon is conjunct a juicy shadow point, black moon Lilith.
Mm.
And in fact, one might arguably say that the shadow of Cancer is sort of like rageful attack.
I'm going to need an explanation
Well,
there.
because the shadow of a sign has to be its antithesis of the central, essence of that sign, right?
Okay.
So if Cancer is about caring for others and nurturing and creating a sense of self-care, then the shadow of that is to destroy. Look, I feel like I skipped over the point that you were making, though, was that you identify that people who are driven powerfully by this archetype by virtue of having their sun in Cancer do bring with them a kind of nurturing, tender perspective. In fact, There's a person in my life who's got Cancer Sun, Cancer Moon, and Cancer Mercury retrograde that I spend a lot of time with.
Wow.
And one of the things that I learn in that relationship powerfully is I'll have a reaction to something and I'll be like triggered, like, wow, they pissed me off. And this is the person who can always say, well, I'm sure they were doing their best in this. Or how about thinking about that perspective? A very, caring and sensitive sense of perspective. That's all about this beautiful mansion where we connect to family and coming back home again, so that we can tether out into the world. So without this energy, we wouldn't be able to lather, rinse, repeat life, because this is where we come into the personal sense of restoration. What do I need so that I can then match what the world wants of me? So certainly when it comes to the intentions that we would set in a Cancer new moon, we always want to come back to what are the needs of the self? What is the care that I would like to amplify in my journey and have more of?
I'm writing that down for my personal
I love that.
for my personal notes right here.
Yes. Listen, from that perspective alone, the level of importance of this new moon should not be underestimated. If we don't care for ourselves, we cannot function properly in the world. It's the silly little adage of put your oxygen mask on first, because if you're dead, you can't help your child. I think one of the reasons why this self-care thing is such a conundrum for us in modern Western culture is that we live in a society where productivity is the coin of the realm. So the outside world will constantly remind you that you are only as good as your accomplishments. But what's really insidious about this is that at the personal level, this can turn into a recipe for shame, because we internalize that sense of I'm supposed to accomplish, and if I don't, I must be somehow failing. And this sets people up to then move in the direction of more action instead of remembering that the actions will be worthless if you aren't routinely restoring and caring for self as part of how you move through the world. Because without that, drive to accomplishment will destroy lives and the body and health and serenity and everything else. So Cancer New Moon is when we put deep and abiding intentions into place to honor our self-care, take care of our needs before attending to anything else, and sort of understand that this is a moment to create more of what family brings, community that's private and uplifting, not just family of origins here. Cancer is about family, but it does not have to be about mommy, daddy, brother, and sister. This can be about your chosen family from the perspective of this is who I choose to surround myself with because they are reflecting restoration, self-care, and, making sure that all needs are met first. So on the one hand, one might think of the Cancer new moon as being intensely personal because it's about what the needs of the body are, skin in.
Hmm.
But there's something interesting about this time on the planet where we just keep accelerating more and more towards this, sense of crisis with polarization and rage and all the stuff, all the things, all the divide and all of
All
the
the
yes,
tense,
right?
all the tense things.
There's something interesting about this Cancer new moon being exactly conjunct Black Moon Lilith, that I think that this is a new moon that helps people activate their activation. Meaning, the world needs people to stand up and become activists for the care that we want to create on the world's stage. So the Cancer energy is thought of as personal because it's part of the bottom 6 signs in the chart. In astrology, that sign represents, the individual. But if you even just think of this, Cancer as the archetype of the mother, who's going to fix the problems of the world? The mothers, the
Right.
women.
What's more
That's right.
nurturing?
And what's more powerful than a mother on fire?
Okay.
Taking that Cancerian access to rage and turning it into activation. Why I'm pointing this out is because Black Moon Lilith is a shadow point that incorporates the Lilith mythology. Lilith being the first woman created in equal stead to Adam as the Canaanite origin story that said Adam and Lilith, man and woman, were created equally from the same material. And in that story, they are 50-50. Then the Israelites had the cute little subservient story, Adam and Eve. She's fashioned from his rib. And so at some point, the patriarchy discarded the Lilith story and lifted up the Eve story, and we all freaking know why that happened. It was just pure patriarchal control. And we live in a world that is out of balance because the patriarchy has freaking taken over. And the only thing that's going to balance things out is a restoration of the divine feminine. The challenge with the subservient feminine archetype of Eve is that Judeo-Christianity, in the absence of enormously powerful feminine archetypes, has only the sort of loving forgiveness element, the sort of Mother Mary aspect of feminine archetype. And all the power goes to the men. Power goes to the masculine archetypes, and women are designed for just the soft, nurturing aspects of feminine consciousness. But man, the feminine consciousness is about death and rebirth, man. It's like the feminine principle destroys as easily as it creates and understands creation and destruction as one consciousness that, by the way, the feminine principle has domain over. So you put all the destructive energy into the masculine principle and you have a planet at war. Black Moon Lilith as this shadow aspect connecting to powerful feminine creative destructive energy also relates to the Black Moon piece. Like in Western astrology, we call it Black Moon Lilith. So it's two concepts. And I've already started with the Lilith. Powerful, creative, destructive, feminine principle in action. That I think that energy let loose and allowed to sort of rise up and be part of people's consciousness will be part of how we change the world. Mars and Saturn are in a sextile today, and this will bleed into tomorrow's new moon energy. And this is kind of like we talked about earlier about productivity being the coin of the realm, and that we skip over self-care because we move too fast towards the things we want to accomplish. Well, choices and accomplishments and movement, that's all Mars. Mars in a sextile with Saturn is like a gentle application of the brakes such that we can do the work we need to do because we're not moving too fast. So today and tomorrow, our impulses to act are going to be tempered by Saturn, and we benefit from that. Again, it's the sextile. So if you keep sort of shooting off at the pace that you're used to, you're not going to benefit from Saturn and sort of saying, hey, let's slow down. This is an important moment. You'll miss it. And it's not like a Saturn square where the brakes are applied from, external forces. If you don't put the brakes on yourself today and tomorrow, you will continue to speed through and miss this beautiful opportunity to set intentions that are both healing and restorative and to help you move through the next lunar cycle with self-care as prominent. I think the yummiest add-on to the new moon tomorrow is something that doesn't even peak until tomorrow exactly with the new moon, which is a sextile between Venus and Chiron. So now we get into the heart space. So Mercury and Chiron allows us to be intellectually aware of the healing process that we are expanding into with this new moon. But Venus connecting with Chiron just opens our hearts up to the healing possibilities. So mind and heart are in congruity with this new moon, which doesn't happen often. We are often at odds between what we think and what we feel. And since both our thinking and our feeling planets are interacting with the great healer in the same geometry, if you pick up some tools of self-awareness, rumination, meditation, cogitating, something that occurs inside the moon's orbit between the Earth and the moon. There's a wobble there. There's a pull and a push where the moon is farther away and closer to the Earth as she moves. This is what creates super moons. Like when the moon is full but also close, we call that a supermoon. So that wobble can be created as an average. There's a mean of that wobble that becomes black moon. She moves through each sign in about 9 months. And once she moved into Cancer 2 months ago, all of our available access to shadowy, rageful, let's burn this down and rebuild it kind of energy is in the sign of Cancer. And this new moon is conjunct this point. I mean, like exactly conjunct. I think the new moon is at like 7 degrees of Cancer, and black moon Lilith right now is at 8 degrees of Cancer. So one of the things that this new moon offers us is an opportunity for each one of us to set intentions to meet the world's needs for change and transformation in that powerful, feminine, creative, destructive impulse that says we can change this because we need to. It's like the mother that eats one of her young because it's not thriving properly. You know, we sort of look at that and say, oh, that's dark. That shouldn't happen. A mother should not eat her young. Except that out in the world of instinct, the mother archetype understands that you raise your young with love, and sometimes you got to eat one. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it's a natural part of how to move through life. So it's like a world that we have created. Some of it needs to be eaten so that it can be reshaped. And there's something about this new moon for those of you who are sort of looking for where you want to be activated. Where do you want to put your voice in terms of the inner rage that you have and a world that needs change? This is a great new moon to consider. Who do you want to be in a world that needs everyone to rise up to their most powerful self-expression possible, so that there are more people helping to actualize a world where all people are cared for and not just some? There are a bunch of sextiles on the sidebar of this new moon, and I wanted to talk about the angle of the sextile before I talk to you about what planets are sextiling each other. Because the 60-degree relationship in geometry is one of potential, meaning if you don't pick up some actions to benefit from the energies that are available, they will just pass you right by. Where there's lots of transits that are undeniable energies, a sextile is kind of like, if you don't pick up behaviors to align with the energies that are in the atmosphere, you won't be able to use them to sort of move forward.
What is that saying? Like, things don't change until things change?
Right. That's beautiful. Yeah, I think that's a perfect example. It's like you can wish for the change, but until you pick up some actions. And so there's energy between Mercury and Chiron. in a sextile. It's actually starting today. So it's part of tomorrow's new moon, but it's already in the atmosphere today, where our perceptions, our conversations, and our thought patterns are productively working with the idea of healing. That if we were triggered by Chiron and Mars last lunar cycle with being sort of introduced to deeper levels of wound or things that needed your attention, Mercury and Chiron in a sextile during a new moon that allows us to deepen our relationship to what we need at a deeply personal level. Mercury and Chiron right now is helping us from the neck up be very well aware of what wounded spaces need our attention. So the new moon moment, the exact time that the sun and the moon gather, is tomorrow night at 7:52 p.m. Pacific time. But the moon moves into Cancer in the wee hours before that, at around 5 a.m. Tuesday morning Pacific time. The moon joins the sun in Cancer, doesn't connect and hit until 8 o'clock that night. So all of those hours from 5 a.m. tomorrow to 8 p.m. tomorrow Pacific time, we have what's called the dark of the moon, which is the most fertile time for intention setting. It's the wettest, the darkest, the most receptive moment when our conscious awareness is receiving sort of an alignment with our unconscious territory. And of course, that's why we set intentions in the new moon, because our conscious awareness carries the intention that we hold. But if we can't download that into our unconscious mind, then how can it take hold as a seed? That's the moon's job. So you cannot miss the new moon intention opportunity. I get asked that question a lot. The energy of a new moon, of all lunations, really plays out over about 3 days. Also, we're setting intentions with every breath that we take, not just in certain sort of moments of the month. I think the power of intention setting at the new moon is the practice of it, the rhythm of it, the cyclical nature of this is when the solar system is receiving the powerful imprints of our intentions that we're setting with every breath all month long. But we do it at the new moon in a kind of ritualized alignment with the rhythms of the solar system itself. So yes, the dark of the moon is the most fertile time, but don't hear that and say, uh-oh, I missed it, I'm in trouble. It's just something to honor if you're able. And do your new moon intention setting during the day tomorrow, if you can, before the 8 o'clock lunation, and trust that you're dialed in enough that all intentions are received by the imprint of not only your consciousness, but the consciousness of the universe itself. And so we dial in this month to set powerful intentions for restoration, self-care, and preparation to climb the mountains of our ambitions, which we'll talk about at the Capricorn full moon. Meanwhile, set those personally felt, family-oriented, healing intentions for yourself at this new moon, and have at it, everybody.
It's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. This week we have a dreamer calling in from Zurich. Madeline, how's it going? What you dreaming?
Oh, wonderful. I'm happy to be here and thank you very much for having me.
Yay.
Welcome.
So, what I'm dreaming, I was walking on a path in the woods So it was just on the edge. I could see a meadow outside the forest. As a snake crossed my path in front of me and innocuously coiled up, I stopped, intrigued but not afraid, and had a good look. It was like gray with a dark gray pattern, like a common European viper or so, that allowed it to blend perfectly with its environment. While I was watching, the scenery and the snake morphed, and the snake was now jet black at the head and the tail, with a pattern of black dots on a golden ground on its midsection. And I thought it was really gorgeous.
Mm.
Next, the meadow outside the woods had turned into a lake. The water surface was calm. I didn't pay attention to other qualities of the water, in which I found myself now at some distance from the shore, looking back towards the spot on the woods I was standing before, and frantically swimming back to shore because the black snake turned moray was now after me, chasing me, and I feared its imminent attack. At this point, the dream stopped. Well, and there you
No,
have it.
you're killing me, Madeline, because there's a trope that I have used for 30, 40 years. Anytime I'm giving an example of like how dream interpretation works, I say you have a dream about walking on a path in the woods, you come upon a snake, and the snake frightens you, and you wake up. Sweetheart, I have used that example of a dream. I can't even count how many times, but literally for like decades. How I use this as an example, as a teaching example, is that I then will say, well, a path in the woods is about your organic walk through life. You know, if you were driving, it would be about your movement socially or professionally or communally. But the moment we're walking, we're in our sort of intimate experience of our own path in life, not connected to others, but deeply connected to ourselves. And of course, if the setting is natural, like if it's in the woods or in a meadow, or in this case, woodsy meadow where there's also lakes appear, then we're really in our organic experience of who we are in this life, in a body, in a organic journey. Snakes are always about change and transformation. They shed their skins. Their growth occurs behind the scenes. When the growth is bigger than the old casing, the skin drops off and the new skin is ready to go, right? So that's how change and transformation works. And then what I'll do when I'm talking about this at the thousands of times that I've done this is, some people love snakes, some people are frightened of snakes. That's where we get our personal association, of one person's snake dream is going to be about change and transformation and that you are frightened of it. You're a perfect example of coming to a moment of symbolic change and transformation. But the dream and how it played out tells me that you're somebody who understands that, who has a willingness to go through the deaths and rebirths that life offers, because your dream and how you received it reflects that. So you just cracked me up with the crazy way this reflects something that I've done as 1,000 times. But there are distinctions in your version of the dream that I'd like to sort of break down with you a little bit. So one of the things that I love about the proximity of where you are is that you are both a little bit in change and transformation, shadow work, stuff that's behind the scenes, because you're in the woods. But you're not deep in the woods. You're just at the edge of the woods. So this dream isn't reflecting some deep, profound change process. It's reflecting something that's easy enough to do by sort of dipping into your unconscious, where the woods represents your unconscious, with a willingness to go exploring in the mystery. So you can see the meadow. So the meadow would be your sort of heartfelt consciousness that's not unconscious, but conscious awareness, the meadow. So you're at the edge of your unconscious mind, coming upon not only a snake representing change and transformation, this snake is coiled up, which tells us that there's something very imminent sort of rising up in the unconscious at the time that you had the dream, because the posture of the snake says, I'm about ready to do something. And here comes your reflection to us that you are not afraid, because you even said, I'm not afraid. I stopped and I wasn't afraid and I had a good look. There's something really interesting, Madeline, about the first iteration of the snake having camouflage, kind of blending in. When did you have this dream, Madeline?
Exactly. It was on January 14th.
So it's recent.
Yes.
Was there anything that was going on in mid-January that was grabbing your attention in your waking life that reflects that some sort of a change was going on in your below?
The transition from my active work life to retirement.
Okay, nothing small, just an enormous life change. Why I'm asking is because I'm intrigued by the fact that when you initially come to the snake, it's gray, which means it's going to be black, right? So we have to consider the meaning of gray and the meaning of black as connected, because they're connected in the dream. The snake turns from a gray and camouflaged, oh, I didn't even notice you kind of energy, to something undeniably deep and powerful, black with a golden belly. There's something interesting to me in the dream that sort of says, while you were not afraid and you stopped to consider the change that was going on, as soon as you do that, as soon as you say, all right, I'll look at this issue, I will look at this thing that my unconscious wants me to be in consideration of, that's when it suddenly becomes jet black. And instead of it being something that you could miss because you didn't see it, because it blended into the environment, it suddenly became an undeniable, somewhat enormous change and transformation, as reflected by its jet blackness and this prominent gold thing. And also just the way you described it. You described that, differently than the sort of energy around how you described the grayness of the snake. So then when you tell me what you were actually grappling with, it's sort of an enormous lifestyle change, that makes sense to me. It's kind of like saying, oh, okay, life is changing. I have some stuff around that, some unconscious, resistance, fear, or curiosity, right? And so I'm willing to look. And then once your psyche says, oh, look, she's come to the woods, the bottom drops out, the snake becomes dark black. And then you get into this interesting sort of setup of going from the shadow work in your unconscious to your emotional life. The meadow has become a body of water. Water is always about our emotions. And in fact, what we find is the black snake, which means life is changing, now feels a little more dangerous. It morphs into an eel. The way you described it had a little bit more sort of higher stakes sensibility about that point, and you suddenly felt frantic to get back to shore. So what that tells me is your visit to the woods and the change in the transformation is asking you to be vulnerable to feelings that come up as you grapple with a life where the structure has changed so radically. And there's a desperation in the dream to say, no, groundedness, I need to be grounded. I don't want to be emotionally sort of vulnerable. I got to get back to where I can stand instead of where I am, which is I'm a little bit drowning in all of the feelings that are coming up as I radically change my life from working to retiring. Perfect expression of change. Wow. How's it going, honey? How's retirement treating you?
I love it.
Oh, yay.
I love it.
Beautiful. Well, the dream to me was the unconscious processing at a moment when maybe it was frightening to you to go through the change, even if that fear was purely unconscious, right? Your waking life, you might have been fine. This is great, right? But the unconscious needs to do its work too. And that's the beauty of dreams. We go to sleep, our conscious awareness thinking mind that narrates and navigates goes away. And then our psyche gets to say, yes, Madeline, we are actually a little vulnerable and frightened and want to feel grounded again. But too late, change has already happened, and, have at this, retired life. I'm so glad you love it.
Oh, that's great.
Yay. Well,
that's really great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thank you for calling in from Germany. I love that. I love feeling multinational.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me again, and wish you all the best.
Oh, thank you, Madeline. You take care.
Love you, show.
Yay!
You take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.